Hello, everybody. Hope you guys are doing well out there. Welcome back. Thank you for being here. All right. I wanted to say great job for everybody who's been keeping up with our rhythm work. We're finished with the rhythm unit. We're going to move on to the other half of reading music right now, which is going to be what we talk about pitch. So we're going to get right into it today. We're going to get through the nitty gritty stuff right in the beginning and stick around because later on today, we're going to finish up with a nice, fun activity, something that's going to match this time of the year, maybe match the weather we get, and something fun. All right, so stick around, guys. Here we go. All right, my friends. So hopefully this all looks pretty familiar. This, of course, all had to do with what we started off our reading music unit about, which was all about
Rhythm.
so now that we've talked about all of our rhythm symbols, we can now go ahead and move on to what we're going to be talking about next, which is going to be all about what we call pitch. So what I'm going to suggest is we just take our cheat sheet. If you have any room on the bottom of this, you can put it on the bottom. If you don't have any room, flip it over. We're going to be adding to our cheat sheet a whole lot today. So let's just go ahead. We're going to draw a line. So we separate our pitch from our rhythm talk. And remember that pitch is the highs and low sounds in music. So why does this matter? Let's take a look at a piece of music. This is something pretty complicated. This is actually written for a pipe organ instrument. We can see here, hopefully you recognize there's a lot of 16th notes up here. They're in bigger groups. You got some eighth notes. You got a half note. You may notice that some of the stems or the beams point upward and some of them are upside down. And there's a reason for that. And all of that has to do with pitch. You may also know that some of these are stacked on top of each other where there's multiple eighth notes happening at the same time on the same stems. This is all having to do with pitch. And if you notice how things go down, goes up, goes down, and back up, and kind of goes back and forth and so on. All of that is pitch. The higher something's written matters. The lower something is written also matters. And we're going to learn exactly all of this. We don't have to worry about playing anything this hard, but this will make a lot more sense to you after we finish this unit. So stick with me here. The first thing we're going to talk about is this right here. So on your cheat sheet here, I want you guys to just go ahead and draw this symbol. I want you guys to draw a little dot. We're going to have to leave some room above it, so make sure you have some room above it. From the bottom of that dot, right in the middle of it, I want you to draw a letter J. No hat, no crossbar across the top. Now, from here, we have to draw a backwards letter S. I don't want you to draw an S that goes to the left and to the right. No. We're going to go to the right. It's backwards. So we're going to start at the top. So we're going to draw top half of the S just a little bit. Bring it back to the center line. And then we're going to finish the S off by going to the other side and then stopping when we get back to that center line. The very last part of this, we draw a little bit of a cinnamon bun, I like to call it, a little swirl right around that center line. Now, I'm willing to bet many of you have seen this symbol before. Mine's really not written perfectly. An ideal one will look just like this right here. Don't worry about the other stuff that you see next to it and behind it yet. That's the symbol. This symbol right here is what we call a treble clef. Treble is an old school term for talking about something that's a higher pitch in music. So if something's more of a higher pitch voice, like a young kid's voice, that would be considered by having a lot of treble. If you ever look at a car stereo, especially an older stereo, you may see the word treble. Nowadays, we just use the word highs instead. This also has another name, which we'll put a little slash here. This is also called the G clef, which by the end of this first lesson should make a little bit of sense. So just stick with me on that. Now there is another clef that we're going to be getting to, just not yet today. And that clef looks a little bit like this right here. But don't worry about that yet. We'll get to that a little bit after the New Year's here. Okay, the next thing we need to talk about is what these 5 lines are that all of these notes are written on. These 5 lines are kind of like a ladder. You know, you can't get too far up. You can't climb a building without a ladder unless you're Spider-Man. But even at that, you need something to climb on. And that's really what these 5 lines work as. And these 5 lines have a name. They're called the staff in music. So let's go ahead and we'll draw one. If you have a ruler, this is a great time to use it. If you don't have a ruler, you can always get away with this by taking a piece of paper and just lining it up with the edges of the paper you're on and just drawing a line across with the edge, moving it a little, drawing a line across again. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to just draw 5 lines. We need 5 of them across our paper. Not too far. I'll give you a little example right here. And then we end up with this. We have 5 lines going right up and down here. Now, don't confuse the squiggly line that I just separated our rhythm from our pitch with. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 lines. These 5 lines are what we call the musical staff. S-T-A-F-F. Don't confuse that with the staff of a place, of a workplace. Just like I'm a staff member of the school here that we all attend, that's not what we're talking about when we say staff. In music, forget about the idea of a worker for something. But if you hear the word staff in music, just think about these 5 lines that we write our pitch on, okay? Please don't confuse those things. Now, what do we use this for? Well, the next step we're going to have to do is take a clef and place a clef on our staff. Now, like I've showed you before here, there are different types of clefs. And depending on the clef that we choose to use, each one of these lines and the spaces between the lines, very importantly, will get a different name. And the names that we give them are based on something we talked about. If you remember back around the time of Halloween when we took a look at the Michael Myers theme and took a look at the piano, each one of these lines and spaces will be given a name from the musical alphabet. Now, for those of you that remember, the musical alphabet uses just the very first 7 letters of the alphabet that we have grown up, most of us knowing, which is, of course, A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. Only the first 7 letters. We're not going to go on to H. If we ever needed to go beyond this and had to keep going, we would always go back and loop right back to A, right at the beginning. And if we ever had to go lower in music and had to go backwards in the alphabet and had to go lower than A, we would loop back to G. We just use these 7 letters in an infinite loop in music, okay? That's all you're going to need to know. And now we need to figure out which of these lines in which space belongs to each one of these letters. So let's move on. The next step we're going to do is we're going to take our treble clef or G clef, clue. We're going to take this clef and we're going to put it onto our staff. Now, this is very particular, so follow me here. If you're making a cheat sheet, this will help you. So I highly suggest you're doing this. We're going to draw this clef on here. Now, watch how I do it before you try. Down below, on the very far left side of our staff, just give yourself maybe a centimeter in. We're going to draw that dot that we started off with, just like over here. From this dot, we're going to draw the letter J. It's going to go straight up. Okay. When we reach this top line here, we're going to go up just a little bit beyond it, not far at all. We're going to go swoop to the right and then meet the center line. Then from the center line, we're going to go down and we're going to meet back at the center line when we reach the bottom line going across of our staff, the lowest of the 5 lines going across. From here, we're going to go swoop up almost to the 3rd line of our staff and then start to circle around the 2nd line of the staff. This is very important that the center of our swirl that we talked about earlier goes with the 2nd line of the staff going right through it. Without the 2nd line going through here, this would not be a treble clef. Now, if we take a look at that and then we take a look at something like this, hopefully our clef here matches up a wee bit like this does. And it's pretty close. We're going to go with that for now. Now, we need to know what each of these lines and spaces gets from the names that we mentioned over here in our musical alphabet. And I'm going to just go ahead and start off, and I want you guys to use your context clues here. This right here is called a treble clef. Its nickname is the G clef. It swirls, very much focusing around the 2nd line. If this is called a G clef, we're going to start off with whatever note is on this line right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a big whole note, good-sized donut, around that 2nd line. Now, I'm going to go work from right to left here, a little bit backwards, so just try to stay with me here. This note right here, it's going to have a name, this pitch, I should say. Take a while to guess what it's going to be called. Yeah, since this swirls around the 2nd line, it gets its nickname the G clef because it swirls around what we call the G line. So the note G will go in this 2nd line note. Now, don't let it confuse you. This line should be going through the center of the note. That's on purpose. This means that this note is what we call a note on a line. Okay? All right, guys, we're going to continue this conversation about the pitches on the staff in part 2. So stick around. I'll see you guys in a little bit.